Welcome, everyone, to Engage in Trade International E-commerce. My name is Susan Spitz, and I am the Manager of International Business here at the World Trade Center St. Louis. We're glad that you're joining us today. I'm very excited about this webinar. It's going to be jam-packed with information on cross-border selling online. And our speaker just has so much information and know-how. In fact, he's asked me to stay on camera with him just to make sure that he doesn't go too fast so that we're all clear and following him on some of the incredible content that he has to give us today. So we will also have an audience poll, a couple of questions for the audience so that he has a good understanding of who is listening today. And I did want to say that even if you're not currently doing international e-commerce, many of the statistics and the information that he's going to cover is relevant to domestic online selling as well. I just know you're going to learn a ton of information in this next hour. Just a few housekeeping rules to let you know about. All participants will be muted for the duration of the presentation. However, if you wish to ask questions, you can do so by using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to get to those at the end of the presentation. Also wanted to let you know that the slides and a recording of the presentation will be available a few days after the webinar is complete. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce to you the Deputy Director of the World Trade Center St. Louis, Ms. Stella Sheehan. Stella has been with the World Trade Center for 20 years, I believe. I have 18 on here, but I think that number has gone up. She leads our trade team, consisting of myself and Annie Mbale, who is our webmaster today. She also heads up our Executive Certificate in International Trade, which is an online export training program. She oversees our 16 sister cities and is the executive producer of our signature event, Growing Global. Born and raised in Ireland, Stella has lived, worked, and studied extensively in international markets, including Belgium, France, Italy, and the UK. She holds a BA in French and Italian from the National University of Ireland, Galway, and an MA in Applied Language for Business from the University of Ulster at Coleraine in Northern Ireland. She's a graduate of Leadership St. Louis, and she was also appointed to the Missouri District Export Council over the past couple of years. And I always say she's the wind beneath the wings of our executive director, Tim Nowak, who is also in the audience today. Stella is now going to give a brief overview of World Trade Center's work and introduce our speaker. Over to you, Stella.
Thank you so much, Susan, and thank you for acknowledging the 20th anniversary. Obviously, I was a mere child when I started at the World Trade Center. Thank you to all of you as well for joining us for what I know will be a very informative event at a time of year when international e-commerce is literally at our doorsteps and all around us. As Susan mentioned, I lead the trade side of the house, and we like to say that the World Trade Center has three main pillars: people, trade, and investment, the three key equal ingredients which make up a global city. The people side consists of our 16 sister cities scattered around the globe, and perhaps our most well-known initiative, the St. Louis Mosaic Project, which is headed up by my colleague, Betsy Cohen. And that is an initiative to attract foreign-born to the region and assist them by way of programming and networking once they get here. The trade side provides companies with the tools they need to trade internationally by way of counseling, referrals to our federal and state partners, and organizing educational events like the one you're attending today. Last but certainly not least, our Foreign Direct Investment, or FDI pillar, led by my colleague Sean Mullins, assists companies around the globe who may be interested in setting up their North American base in the St. Louis region, while simultaneously assisting foreign companies who've already chosen St. Louis and wish to expand and continue to invest here. And now to our much anticipated speaker, Mr. Josh Halpern. Josh has led go-to-market efforts for US companies going abroad and major Asia-based market technology, or MarTech, and e-commerce tech platforms entering the US. The CEO of Getting to Global Inc., he is known by his alter ego, the Vanbassador, driving social commerce content and conversion for some of the fastest growing direct-to-consumer and B2B brands in the US and Latin America. He continues to chair the Getting to Global's Grow Big initiative, a public-private partnership to empower SMEs to sell more across multiple channels and geographies. The initiative is an official partner of the US Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration and the Small Business Administration, and is sponsored by service providers including Avalara, Digital River, and Amazon, to name but a few. Josh continues to consult C-suite executives on global digital trade strategies in product verticals ranging from advanced transportation technology to celebrity beauty, health, branded agriculture, and outdoor lifestyle. He is a former US Commercial Service officer representing the US retail apparel, auto, marine, and cosmetic industry in China, where he worked closely with hundreds of brands, including Estee Lauder, Tiffany & Co., Harley Davidson, and Bobbi Brown. Following his role in China, the International Trade Administration asked Josh to launch the e-commerce innovation lab for the US Department of Commerce to help US consumer brands sell directly to consumers through e-commerce sales channels. Josh holds a BFA from New York University's Tisch School of the Arts, an MBA from INSEAD, and an EMBA from Tsinghua University. He speaks Spanish and Chinese. Ni hao, Josh, over to you.
Hey, ni hao, Stella. Thanks so much for that robust introduction. I appreciate it. We got a lot to cover today. Let me know if you can see me, and I will also see if you can see my, let's see, my screen. You can probably see, can you see just my slides or just?
Not the slides yet. I mean, we see it, but we see different view.
Okay, let me do that. Okay.
Yep.
You can see that, right? Okay. All right. All right, everybody. It's great to be here. Thanks again for the World Trade Center St. Louis and all your visionary engagement on global. We're going to talk a lot about e-commerce. I'm going to start broad-based, and then we're going to get very specific. If I talk too fast, A, this is all recorded, and B, Susan will tell me to slow down. Okay. I won't go through this slide. This has already been discovered and discussed. Okay. So in general, if you're here, you already know these stats, right? 33% of global e-commerce will be cross-border by 2028. That number's probably already been dwarfed. Everybody's really accelerated that. A huge market opportunity. This number is so broad that it really doesn't matter for us. But when we break it down a little further, yes, there are people buying cross-border in the billions across the world. Just to name a few, you've got a few right there. Okay.
So that's a good time to, can we do the poll then? Or,
yeah, let's do the poll with just a few questions. If you have the ability to just quickly answer those, we won't stop. We'll just keep going, but we'll take a look later
well, I think they'll show up on the screen. So let's give folks just a minute. There's three questions. If everybody can just quickly answer them, we can see the results after that.
Okay. I think while they're answering, I presume I can keep discussing. You guys want to take them?
So we've only done this once or twice, so I don't think it's going to interrupt you, but I want to make sure people are catching it. Oh, I guess I just realized, sorry, I need to complete it and then it'll go off my screen.
Okay. For me, I'll just keep going just for time. And then if people want to just complete it. Okay. So you've heard this number before. A lot of people love to throw this number around. 97% of all consumers are outside the US. I'm going to say that is kind of silly. Let's just say, obviously not everybody is a consumer overseas, right? The guy eating, pizza is definitely not, considered a consumer, but he is a consumer locally, right? So if we're going to look at that, that guy, for example, not a consumer of ours. So let's be more specific. And that's why I really love this stat and this graph in general. So to blow it up a little further, here we're talking about the untapped revenue. Global e-commerce sales is in the trillions of US dollars. That's that blue line. And the US share of global e-commerce is the green line. What does that mean? A lot of room to grow. It also means we're probably not, we're not really one of the leaders in that for a lot of reasons. It's not just because of our insulation and our local market that really takes most of our attention. It's also our products aren't always priced accordingly, or our logistics are kind of challenged in terms of price. So lots of reasons, but it's good to understand that there's a lot of other data that's more relevant, I think, than the fact that there are tons of consumers in the world. Now, considerations we're going to cover today. Channels. What are we talking about? these are the options. You've got 4 options of how you're going to sell your product. This is not just international, but domestic. You're going to sell on marketplaces, social commerce, which is like a TikTok or an Instagram. You're going to talk brick and mortar. You may or may not be doing this yourself overseas, or maybe using a distributor or your own website. Okay, I put website last for a lot of reasons we'll talk about in terms of why that might not be the priority. B2B or B2C or D2C, depending on how you do it, direct to consumer or through a distributor, or a hybrid model. A couple different hybrid models, one of which is you tell a company overseas that's a distributor for you, you cannot sell on Amazon. In the UK, for example, you can only sell brick and mortar, or you can sell on these channels. I will take care of the rest and go direct to the consumers in that market. Often a challenge because most distributors today want to be online. They understand that most people are buying online. So that becomes an issue when you have a legacy contract with a distributor. If you don't, and you're creating new ones, some ways to work around this is saying, hey, when somebody buys it off of the work that I've done on my website from the US or Amazon.com or .uk, I've done the work to get the consumer there, but you're going to fulfill it from your warehouse in the UK, distributor A. Thanks a lot. And I'm going to give you a discount on your next purchase of product. So you can do hybrids like that. And that's kind of the world that we live in today. Digital marketing, we're going to talk a little bit about. We're talking about fulfillment and logistics, and payments and facilitation, financing, we understand, and then legal compliance and protection. All these things that make your eyes glaze over. So what channels are you selling through? Let's just talk quickly. If you're on your website, snapshot here. Again, you'll get these slides later. This is everything you need to do on your website to be a localized website. If you don't like that view, take a look at mobile. Same thing, different format, but again, important to consider what's going on there for your website. Guess what? Great. So yes, I know the poll just maybe
Yeah.
but the exciting thing about this is that none of this stuff is things that you can't do with an app or a plugin on your website. If you're on Shopify, a lot of stuff already happens through global markets. If you're on WooCommerce, which is a WordPress plugin for your e-commerce, there's also lots of plugins that do this for you. Zonos, Ship Passport, Global E. There's a lot of different solutions out there, and if you want, you can always ping me. But these are all available, so you don't have to do this yourself. And do not pay a website operator to go do this manually. I don't care how cheap they are. They can't do it to the optimization level of these plugins, and you're paying a percentage of sale. You need to do it with companies that know how to do it. Okay. Marketplaces, that's your other channel. This is just to say there are lots of marketplaces out there. They're not just Amazon or Etsy or eBay or Walmart. There are lots of other platforms out there, and depending on your niche, you may find that there's B2B platforms that work for you. There's halal products in Malaysia that are on a marketplace, right? So you may find that niche. What's nice about these marketplaces is that that's where the consumers have already been going, and it's already optimized for you. So again, yeah, pros and cons of marketplaces globally. On the left, you've got the pros, right? You don't have to set up a local entity. You've got everything optimized for local and mobile. Your payments are already facilitated with the local payments. What I mean is the consumer feels comfortable buying from those marketplaces using their local payment solutions. And you've got the no localized labeling is an interesting one. We can talk about that. Certain countries, if you're going direct to a consumer, you don't have to comply with local certifications, whether it's FDA, organic, non-organic, animal testing, etc. So there's a lot of opportunities there when you're going direct to a consumer from your US market. Cons, of course, you've got to figure out where your inventory is. Are you putting inventory risk by allocating inventory elsewhere that you cannot access? If, for example, in Christmas, you sell out in the US, but you've already got your inventory committed elsewhere, fulfillment time frames and increased fees, lots of other things. But in general, I do stand strongly around first entry in, if your product fits, is a marketplace. It's just easy to do it. Now, to succeed in marketplaces, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but you've got to test your demand. Duh, kind of. But you did the same thing in the US. You got to do it overseas. There's lots of great ways to do this. Jungle Scout on Amazon or Helium 10 on Amazon. You can use these tools that will tell you the volumes of sales for competitor products, the price they're selling for, everything. Imagine a world where 20 years ago, if you found fulanito down the road and he was selling products from your hardware store that competes with your hardware store. And all of a sudden you could find out everybody who walks in the store, what they bought, at what price they bought. It's a crazy world. Well, you can do that again with Jungle Scout and Helium 10, two of many tools that will scrape Amazon and tell you what's selling. So figure that out.
Are those free tools, or I assume they're worth
I
it-
don't think they're
worth it
free. They may have a free, like a freemium, but I don't think so. I think there's but it's pretty
It's
minimal.
worth
I think the subscription fee. I don't know. I have no direct relationship with either of those companies, but you can test traffic as well for your website on similarweb.com. They do have a free version, but most companies, if they're small, don't have enough statistically relevant data to trigger it. But they can use a proxy, another company they compete with, to figure out where their traffic's coming from. That's SimilarWeb. Anyway, once you do that, you figured out there's demand, you want to grow your demand. There's lots of ways. I won't read through all this stuff, but then you've got to fully localize. That means really, at what point do you want to localize your inventory a little closer to market? Again, for marketplaces, you can use things like Amazon MCF. If you're familiar with Amazon FBA, imagine the world where you've got fulfillment by Amazon that's operating now. You put your inventory in a warehouse. What they've launched is MCF, which means if someone buys your product off your website, Instagram, even Walmart, all those things can be fulfilled through your Amazon warehouse and your Amazon fulfillment. You would not, it's
What
all
does MCF stands for what?
Multi-channel fulfillment.
Okay.
Very interesting stuff. But what's really exciting, and they launched recently, is the ability to place inventory in one of their 5 MCF warehouses around the world. They can fulfill, let's say in the UK, you can have your orders fulfilled from Instagram and from your website anywhere you want, but it'll be from that same inventory on Amazon FBA. So that's really exciting. But what's starting to happen is they're also going to start to be able to fulfill from a US FBA warehouse into overseas markets, which is a whole game changer. I won't get too far into that, but that's kind of that process of localization. On marketplaces, the top things to do, you got to look at some of the insights. We talked about that, Jungle Scout and Helium 10. Look at where your traffic's going and coming from. Optimize all your content for local. Again, AI is a great tool for this. You can take your content and say, hey, I want all these 5 sweaters, but I want 5 different ethnicities projected in those models. And you don't even have to do a model shoot now. You've got localized content with localized people. It's pretty amazing stuff. Logistics, of course, you got to figure out who's fulfilling and where, and protection of your monitoring your price structures, etc. All these different things. We won't get too deep because we don't have a lot of time today. Next channel, social commerce. Obviously, we talked about, now we've got marketplaces in your website, and then the third is social commerce. That's selling off of Instagram or TikTok. Instagram and TikTok, these are major channels. We're seeing, I have companies that are selling 70% of their products on Amazon. Their revenue is coming off of Amazon. They now have 70% off of TikTok with zero cannibalization of their Amazon sales. Why? Because people who go to Amazon are looking for the product. People who go to TikTok they can't do anything. Their thumbs are broken. They only go like this. Their brains only work in one way, and they just discover stuff and they buy it. It's all discovery. It's great if you want to introduce, especially to a new market, your products, because you're doing it to an audience where you're trying to find your tribe. And if you've already found followers, but you're not optimizing to convert revenue from those, you can put yourself on these marketplaces. Social commerce sites. TikTok launched TikTok Shop, and we know in the US, they are launching it elsewhere. So interesting stuff. In terms of overall social media, which I think is a proxy or ultimately a driver for social commerce, meaning the ability to buy off of these same social sites, worldwide is in the white, where to the right, but basically on the worldwide average of social media use. So good news for everyone who thinks we're overly social. The truth is everyone's overly social except Japan. I don't know what they're doing, but we can talk about that another time.
Where is the US on this one?
We're 4, I think 1, 2, 3, 4 from the 4 to the right from worldwide.
Oh, I see it. Yep, USA.
So we're about the average. But I think the big wake-up call here is just that there is a massive amount of social media happening in countries that you may not have expected to. And that's also where they're starting to buy. In just Latin America alone, I put the little TikTok boo thing because we know in the US we boo TikTok. But if you're going overseas, fortunately or unfortunately, TikTok is a dominant force. Latin America, one of the top dominant forces. There are other channels, 92% or something like that of people use WhatsApp. You've got Facebook as well, still very valid there, even for people, companies may even have a website, they have a Facebook page. And then Instagram, but it's really slowing down in TikTok. In fact, to that point, a couple of quick top markets, Mexico and Colombia, just looking at those alone, you see Facebook and Instagram users taking a little bit of a dip, unbelievably 25% increase in TikTok users. I took a major brand, one of the largest retailers, a client of mine, online retailers, cross-border from LA, globally, they're in 190 markets. They invest millions of dollars in Facebook and Google ads in Latin America. So we went down to Mexico together. We did some focus groups and we discovered nobody is actually finding them or buying from Google or Facebook. They moved all their ads away from that into TikTok. All their consumers are on TikTok first and then may or may not go to the company's actual app. Some of them are still on Instagram, but they all say TikTok is their driver for purchasing. So again, unignorable when you're talking international, as much as we can probably, we maybe, I hope we can ignore them here, but you know, this is a quick snapshot here of just pricing. I get a lot of questions about, well, how much does it cost to get an influencer and do this online and do this with other people?
That's a great question. Yeah.
This is very broad. It doesn't really help you if you say, well, but I've got this product and everybody loves this product. If I'm selling lip balm, the average, let's say, order value for TikTok is $35. So again, you know, there's not a lot of margin to pay out these influencers, and these influencers aren't expecting a ton, but they also can very easily promote, whereas other platforms not so much. So it varies a lot. In today's age, you can go on Upwork or Fiverr, and you can say, I want a UGC, meaning user-generated content video, and you can get 20 kids basically around the world, wherever you want per your profile, and they'll all do for 15, 20 bucks a video where they're holding up your, you know, your lip balm and they're saying how much they love it. Sadly, not authentic. Sadly, that's the world we live in. Next stop is AI doing it for us. So I guess we're still okay.
Yeah.
What sucks about cross-border sellers? Of course, these are the top considerations or top challenges that you will all face. If you notice, I'll just skim across the top. Most of them are related to logistics, duties and taxes, you know, and supply chain issues. Of course, the other pieces are there too, but that's going to play into what we talk about now, right? So the most complex part of your global expansion is going to be, it's all right here. This is called the iceberg model. At least I call it that. I don't know if Digital River calls it that.
It's my favorite slide when I've seen you before. It's just really helpful.
What we love about this is the blue. Of course, the blue is a nicer color than black. Black technically not a color according to my son. Your brand and customer service is where you should be focusing. Those black pieces are the parts those are these glazing over pieces. The good news about these pieces is all of those, because they're hard, means companies have come in to take care of it for you. So you do not need to do that. And we'll talk about why. So why compliance and duties and taxes. So this is a company I've worked with before, Avalara, but there's others. Zonos does duty and taxes. Global Passport. The reason I say these names is so that you know it's not just one company. There's lots, but behind Shopify, for example, Shopify will take care of duties and taxes for you. So at the checkout, they'll already calculate duties and taxes, and then the consumer will be able to buy that product and pay the duties and taxes up front. It's called delivery duties paid. Not all, you know, if you're not offering this, consumers are used to expecting this now. They want to know what it is. They want to pay it up front. They don't want to have to go to a post office when they get it in whatever country and then pay it after the fact. Avalara will take care of this on the back end in Shopify. If you're on WooCommerce or if you're on BigCommerce, these other platforms or Magento or Salesforce, you have other plugins for you that will do this. Avalara will do it if you're a big enough company, but so will these other platforms, right?
And those, Josh, those are plugins on your website?
No, on your, you'd put them on your website, but if, in the case of Avalara, like they'll manage it through your entire, you know, thousands of SKUs across all your sales, B2B or B2C, and they have a whole infrastructure. Most of the companies are not, you know,
and
probably on
even
this.
if you're using the social platforms as well.
Yeah, social problems. The issue about social, for example, right now, actually TikTok tried this in Southeast Asia. They tried to do a duty and tax calculation for cross-border, and it failed. They're relaunching it apparently, but who knows? They may be a little distracted in the U.S. But they're relaunching something around cross-border. The idea being that when you're on TikTok and from you're an overseas consumer, you go to checkout and it's already calculated. Right now, that's not the case. So, and there's no way for you to do it because you can't get into the TikTok checkout and manipulate anything. They wouldn't let you touch that.
So I think it would be helpful to explain. So how do people solve that?
It's an awesome question, Susan, because what people can do, a hack around saying, hey, well, I've got millions of followers all of a sudden in New Zealand. I have no idea why. They're all on Instagram. They love me. How do I reduce the friction for them to buy? And say, okay, you can send them to your website, and your website should already be optimized. So if you're on Shopify or anywhere else, let's say you have a Zonos plugin, that you send them to that buy page on the checkout right from your social. You say, click bio, and then they have the duties and taxes already set up for you. But you've got to start with optimizing your website. What's interesting though is with these plugins, you can use your website for your sales from your social. And that's where I think it's a really great opportunity. There's a new company out, and I forget I can ping you later, but there's a company out that I was talking to that has the ability to stay within Instagram, but it feels and looks like it's still within Instagram, and the checkout's there, and you don't lose that there's not a lot of friction when you convert over. So because a lot of people will stop, they're not going to go, they're busy doing their one thumb thing. They don't want to go clicking on your website.
By the way, I think a lot of these links that you're mentioning, I think we can try to pull them and send them out with the follow-ups.
Yeah,
so
I can send you a list of these, and you guys can pick and choose. And I know a lot of these folks, some of these companies I know, but one of the things I thought was interesting, why this matters in general, a 3PL that you hire, if you're not using one of these tools, they're going to ask you what the code is. You're going to give them the code. Depending on the country, the last 4 digits are different. It depends on how they classify the product, or better yet, how you classify the product. But if you fail to do that, the 3PL will likely take a higher, pay a lot higher duties and taxes because they don't want to have the product returned. It's a mess. It's annoying for them. And it's ultimately, if you don't know any better, why do they care?
I want to slow down just a second here, just to make sure. I think most of the people listening are up to speed on this, but the HS codes are how you categorize every product, and they're understood around the world, but there are differences, slight differences. And what you were talking about in terms of a 3PL is a shipping company.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. So, yeah. The first 6 digits are universal, and it's the ability for a customs broker to say, I don't know, I'm not opening up this box, but you're saying the code says that it's a phone. Okay, first 6 are great. But in my country, there's 4 to 6 other digits that are country specific.
Yeah.
Why this matters, obviously, depending on the country, you can have different product digits, and that duties and taxes could vary greatly. But one of the most immediate ones is, let's say, Canada. If you say, well, what are these called? Are they slippers? Are they ballet shoes? Are they female? Are they slipper? Are they, other kinds of shoes, right? Depending on that, more or less, you can have a variance of, in this case, 18% of duties and taxes. That would crush your margins. So that's the kind of thing you want to be aware that that's important. But the beauty is you don't want to be in the weeds figuring it out. You just want to use a tool that does it for you. Okay, going back to that model that I
So you have tools that can do that? Because also some of our partners can help with that too. So
yeah, I mean, if you're using e-commerce, you shouldn't be paying anybody to do this manually. You should be using a tool. Again, there's Zonos, there's Passport Shipping, there's
those are some
Yeah. Those are ones that will do it, and they'll do it as a percentage of sale of your international. So it's not even going to affect you domestically. So
there's also just like the U.S. Commercial Service and the state of Missouri, as you know, Josh, because you used to work with the U.S. Commercial Service. They also can do some of that for free. They can at least verify that you've chosen the proper thing, so that you won't be potentially at risk of getting fined.
Yeah, great. I mean,
is there a point where you talk about de minimis also, or is?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it. Let's see where I'm talking about it. Yeah, we can talk about it now really quick. I mean, essentially, de minimis is the threshold of which you can sell a product into a country before you get taxed on that product.
The price, the value, or the price?
On the price going in. And then again, it's for example, if you're selling a $100 product, well, okay, in the US's case, it's $800 de minimis. You can sell 3 dresses at $200 each, and you're still under the de minimis at the retail price of those dresses.
Yeah, which means you don't have to do some of this.
Right. Well, here's the problem with that. Great. I mean, here's the problem, right? The US has an $800 de minimis. That may change depending on what the Senate figures out. That is why we all buy stuff from Shein, and I don't, by the way, or what's the other one? Temu. They've come into the market and everyone's like, where the hell do they come from? Well, we have an $800 de minimis, which means they can send product direct from China, pre-labeled to the end consumer. And if it's under $800, they're not paying any of these fat duties and taxes that we put on them back in the previous 8 years, let's say. I don't want to call out it, but yes, we put this on there. So what did they do? They said, great, let's increase the direct to consumer sales. Let's figure out who the buyers are in advance and label them earlier. And then guess what? Let's put it into Tijuana on a cross-border delivery system. And within 2 days max, I can get it to your door, but I haven't paid the de minimis and I've got it right next to you in Mexico. That is how Shein does it. That is how everybody basically is doing it now. If you're a big enough company, and even smaller ones, because they've started to break up and provide those services. Now, other countries, like let's take Brazil, had a $50 de minimis. I think Canada might have a 20. Why do we even have de minimis? Because basically there was, well, I will say there's a lobbyist from a lot of the express delivery and the other companies. They didn't want to deal with smaller packages and they want to increase that. And so they lobbied to have these de minimis. And well, customs organization has set these things up. Countries like, again, Brazil, $50 de minimis. It's moved up. I think it might be at 75. I don't know now in the last few months. But if you're selling into Brazil, you do have to worry about this because most of your products are probably not under $50. Now, I've had brands say, well, let me create this very niche product. It's going to be $40. It's going to get me into the market and I'm going to be able to sell under the de minimis. And then I'm going to build my brand and kind of get a shoehorn into the market that way. And then maybe I move inventory and partially manufacture in Brazil. Maybe I use one of these other solutions. But that's an option for only certain companies, right? So, but pay attention to de minimis, as you said, Susan, is key because your product selection will be impacted by that, or could be. And if you're right on the border, geez, don't pay, lower the price of the goods and pay, let's say, duties and pay shipping, like include, don't include shipping or whatever you want to do. But that product could be right under the de minimis and you could actually make some money on that market, anyway. So
thank you.
Yeah. Payments, not the same in all markets. That's another one of those challenges, right? You want to make sure, A, that the overseas consumer has the ability to pay in whatever way they want. That's key. And here's some examples. I'll talk about this in a second. The other thing you want to make sure is that when you get the payments, it's coming back to you in the most efficient way possible at the cheapest cost possible for you. This is really best done through an intermediary. There are tons of payment companies out there, from Citcon to Payoneer to WorldPay to Adyen, tons of them. The reason it's important to figure out is a few reasons. One, if you're selling to a consumer overseas, essentially what they're saying is, okay, I'm buying it. I've got a local bank that manages me as a consumer. I'm now communicating with your bank in the US. Well, my bank is going to charge you fees for FX fees, so foreign exchange fees for communicating with you. I'm going to also take a while. My bank is going to take a while, let's say from France, to send you that money back in the US. And I may even decline that purchase because your US bank sees the French bank and says, I'm not sure about this. And this person has lots of emails for the same credit card, et cetera, and they decline that. So decline rates means you've worked hard to get someone to the checkout. They've bought a product and they get declined. You want those to be very low. FX rates are foreign exchange rates that you got to pay. Again, a foreign bank working with your US bank will charge FX rates at a higher premium. And then you also want a shorter time to get that money back to you in the market, or back to you in your repatriate those funds for you. All those things can be accomplished through companies like, again, Payoneer or others, where they're called they take over and you ride their rails because they have their own bank accounts internationally. You don't have to set up a bank account internationally. And you can facilitate those as if you were a local bank, let's say in France. Same with Amazon. You don't list your US bank account on Amazon if you're overseas. You use an Amazon FR, whatever it is. You use the local bank account that you're riding the rails of, whether it's that company I mentioned or not. Okay. Other aspect here, just really quickly, shout out in, let's say, the Middle East, you'll see cash on delivery as the second highest usage. That dropped a little bit during COVID, but cash on delivery means a consumer buys the product. It takes you 2 weeks to get it there. And by that time, they've already exhausted their paycheck and they didn't realize it. And bam, they now decide, forget it. I don't have the money anymore. I'm sending it back. That sits in an inventory in Middle East. You're screwed. That's a problem. You want to avoid that, but you've got to be aware of that. So you may want to offer benefits if people do a digital wallet, or if they use credit cards, or if they do other bank transfers versus cash on delivery. But you also want to manage your expectations of those losses of revenue when you're dealing with certain markets. Okay. Again, back to that wonderful iceberg. Logistics, another wonderful headache. Okay. You've got to figure out how you're selling the product, where you're placing your inventory. And if you're an SMB, you can still keep it in your current warehouse.
Sorry, SMB is what?
Sorry, small and medium business, you can put it in your warehouse.
You know, SME. Okay.
You SME, you can then ship it to an aggregator on the coasts. They wait for a bunch of other small businesses to put their inventory there, and they ship it all, or their sold products, and they ship it all together. They use their volumes and they get discounts. If you're currently talking to your FedEx rep, your DHL rep, or your USPS rep, and they're all like, hey, Johnny, and they know your name, they must be giving you the best deal possible. Oh yeah, I always speak to the company. Oh, my guy gives me the best deals. He really is a great guy. And I had a drink with him the other night. Great. They're not giving you the best deals because they can't, because your volumes are too low. You got a person doing billions of shipments. They're going to aggregate and they're going to get you a better rate. Companies like ShipBob and ShipStation and all these others are Easy Ship. They're all doing this stuff because of those margins. The biggest cost you've got as a company is your really logistics, especially if you're an SMB selling across border. And all these other issues are things that are partially logistics, but partially product classifications. Those are those duties and taxes and all that stuff. So I'm not going to get too far into that. Winners, positive. Look at these winners. They're probably not e-commerce companies, but they got a trophy. This is what the winners are doing. They're using a pricing strategy appropriately. They're figuring out which products in the ranging strategy are appropriate for that market. I'll talk about that in a second. And then the regulatory and labeling, as we talked about. So those are winner strategies. I won't go through each of them because you can screenshot them and read them on your own. But ranging strategies is interesting because, again, as we talked about, some products may fall under de minimis. You want to choose what those are. Some products may be in more demand in certain markets than others. Some products may require animal testing in a market. So you can't.
You're talking about the range of your own products.
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes.
Okay.
So the range of like your SKU set. If you're a single SKU, not an option. You got your product. Single SKU meaning single product that you've got. But we've got companies that say, well, I've got 10 products. One of them is agriculture, for example. I've got a lip balm made out of beeswax. Okay. A great product to go overseas, because if it's a US-based beeswax, you've got your food export or WASADA grants for agriculture, and you should definitely leverage those. But also, you don't have to do animal testing if you go cross-border. So you've got, and you don't have other FDA requirements. So you can go cross-border, a great product for that. Whereas if there's other products that you say, you know what, it's too expensive. It's, I've got, I'm not selling sweaters to, to people in, well, Mexico gets cold, but Colombia, for example, I don't know. You want to make sure your range is allocated and your inventory is allocated properly. I won't go too far into that. Another company's winning strategy of all these different things, right? I'm not going to look at the lagging, but the leading. Again, just to recap, localize your digital experience, timely and cost-effective shipping, 99% delivery success. So you've got to deliver, and robust customer support. Why are all those things? You say, well, yeah, I do that in the US. That's critical. Yes. A cross-border buyer is much more discerning and takes a longer time to figure out if they want to buy from you. They don't even know if you exist for real in the US. They don't know if you're, a scam. They don't know a lot of things. When they finally do, it's going to be based on your ability to accomplish those tasks. And if they do buy from you, the lifetime value, that's what's in the bottom here, the lifetime value of that consumer is usually greater than a domestic buyer, because they've done the work, they've found you, and it's obviously a product they can't necessarily readily get there. So again,
lifetime value of the customer, so you'll retain them.
Yeah, exactly. You'll retain them for longer. They'll pay more. They'll trust you. So your payout for accomplishing these tasks cross-border is much greater, arguably, than doing it in the US. So these are things to consider. Also, just a quick number, if you hit these right, we're seeing around 20% of a company's total revenue can be earned through cross-border. Again, massive variance depending on products, etc. But this is kind of interesting recap of things you got to do. Now, a couple of quick interviews.
Yeah, I just want to stop you before you get into these, just to say, I think it's good that you point that out, because all of the things you've been covering, it's a little overwhelming, right? Somebody's going, wow, is it worth it? But essentially you're giving just a whole bunch of tools that can make it more worth it and make it easier to get there. And then the lifetime value and the retention and the profit margin and everything are better.
Yeah, I'll do a positive recap. Let's do that real quick. And then I'll do these two interviews. So yes, Susan, all the stuff I've said can be overwhelming. If you speak to an agency whose job it is to build out websites for you, they will make it even more overwhelming. If you speak to a customs broker, they'll do it. All of them are incentivized to tell you this sucks. Don't worry, I'll do it for you. I will tell you the great news is that because it sucked for so long, there are amazing tech companies out there that have done this, taken care of it. I've mentioned a few. We can send more links, but in general, you can on your own website and check out duties and taxes are taken care of for you. Shipping has been optimized for global by many companies. There's even a company, actually Passport is one that's a new thing that I've heard, a seller of record. So these are companies that essentially become your seller for you. And they take over all the risk and they take over all the aspects of doing business. You can still use, in the seller of record model, you can still use your own payment method, your own logistics if you wanted to. But there's another company, there's another version of services called a merchant of record. Merchant of record is you've got an overseas consumer, they come to your website and bam, they're actually on either your website or a third-party website. It doesn't really matter. When they go through the flow and they buy that product, the company turns to you, they purchase the product essentially, immediately, instantaneously. They turn around, they're the seller or the merchant of record. You're basically making a domestic sale and you don't have to deal with anything. You're going to pay about 6% of your overall revenue for that, but I think it's well worth it when you're getting started.
Yeah.
So again, amazing advancements in that technology and the solutions out there. Other slight silver lining, my friend Taylor, I talked to him. He runs eCommerce International for Bolé. If you know Bolé brands, they have lots of sunglasses and others. And I said to him these couple of questions, right? One is, what is the biggest challenge or the biggest thing they get wrong with international commerce when it relates to SEO? Because he's really focused on this. He said the biggest misconception we still have is that we need to be having, and this is great news for us, we don't have to have a .uk, a .fr, a .sp, a .mx, those subdomains, those not subdomains, those separate domains in local markets used to be, you get agencies still today. I know a lot of them that speak on a lot of these webinars too, and they love to tell you how they can make all these 5 different websites for you in different languages. It's the best way to optimize your SEO, your juice to be able to be visible on Google and others is to keep the same domain, but you can, through I call it IP address localization or knowing where your customer is coming from, you can show them certain things that are unique to their market. For example, bathing suit in our winter in Australia and vice versa, right? All these things are things you should be doing. And then you can have, you'll have like a france.bolé.com, for example, or a bolé.com/France or /FR. Those are all off the same domain. So that architecture is really important if you're building your digital marketing from your website. Now, I wouldn't recommend most of your companies who haven't gone overseas or who don't have a huge website presence to go direct from your website. We've talked about that earlier. I said I was going to talk about it later. So here's the later. To drive traffic to your website is very costly. If you're not ready to invest in that, you're going to want to look at marketplaces and social commerce first. But in the case of Bolé, they've got a massive budget and a massive amount of focus on their website. Differences in different countries, obviously, there are different laws around safety, security, and privacy. GDPR most closely mirrors our California and soon kind of global or national kind of security and safety. We're getting increasingly focused on that. No map, minimum advertised pricing, very interesting. In Europe, you cannot set a pricing structure where everyone has to have the same price. I I find this fascinating. We're used to saying, okay, so retail price is this, and I don't want my distributors going below that. That's called price fixing in Europe. They don't let you do that. And that's something you've got to be aware of, because you may find that you have a distributor that wants to sell for less. And you've got to figure out how to negotiate to incentivize them not to do that. You can do it. I mean, you can have your own guidelines for what they can and can't do, but it can't be related to price. And that's the wording issue. We can look at contracts as well. One of the guys who talks to me a lot about this as well is Ben over at, his name's Ben Singer. I don't have it on here, but Ben runs international for Highlands Natural. If you have babies and you've ever used a homeopathic medicine for them, chances are it's Highlands. I call them placebos. My wife disagrees.
I
They
use
are
2 of their
garbage.
products and they work for me.
Yeah, they work. See, so obviously they got to work, because they're like the largest homeopathic baby medicine company in the U.S.
I use them for myself. I didn't
Oh,
even know
okay.
they had baby
Great.
products.
Yes.
Leg cramps.
Oh, interesting. So great products. They have a lot of things that they deal with, right? Regulatory restrictions. In certain cases, they're classified as pharmaceutical. In China, they had a huge challenge with this. If they're pharmaceutical, it's a little different than if they're all natural. Let's say, a pellet of honey. It might have a very different qualification, but when they get into the pharmaceutical, it's basically really impossible for them to get a distributor. It's 12 months of lead time. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's a problem. Prohibiting ingredients. Yes, certain ingredients are not allowed in certain countries. And then product liability and safety, of course. There's a lot of, it depends if you're in this category. You'll know what these things are. Counterfeiting risks. Yeah, they've got a lot of people who copy their box and then they don't have the right product in there. That could be dangerous, let alone illegal. But they've got to monitor it. So Ben will actually go into Mexico. He's actually from Mexico originally, and he will walk the stores of the pharmacies. And this is one of the things I say for everyone going international is get your hands dirty. He gets his hands dirty. He goes and looks at what's selling right next to his product. Where are they being placed? And he's got to constantly be like kind of banging the drum so that the overseas distributors and the retailers are just like, oh, okay, these guys are actually here. I can't just do what I want. Great example of getting your hands dirty. I've got another one, but we don't know if we have time. Complex labeling requirements. Yes, if you're going direct to consumer, sometimes you can do a sticker over your label, but sometimes you can't. If you're going into France or you're going to French-speaking Canada, there's certain times you can, and certain times you can't. But in general, you do have to have a label that's in French. So there's certain issues that you've got to be aware of. And what's nice about certain things like STEP grants and others, the State Trade Export Program, you can get up to $10,000 or maybe 15, depending on the state. That will give you money that you can use to optimize your labels for international, right? All that stuff.
Yep. We have, and just for the audience who don't know about that, the state of Missouri operates that program, and we can help connect you for that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, great program. Yeah. Okay, that's kind of where we're at.
Great job.
Tell you another anecdote of getting your hands dirty, or we can go to questions.
Well, there is one question already, and I'm sure there'll be lots of them. And of course, as you know, I have a couple ready to go too. But thank you so much. Great job getting through all that content. And hopefully everybody was able to hang on and follow. We've got some people in the audience who are already doing this, and so they're probably going to be, up to speed more than like I haven't done it. So, so this question is it's a great question. How do you recommend localizing customer support and how to manage the returns?
Yeah, great question. So I'll give you something real quick. So managing customer support. So we had a company that was doing, had a complex product, Concept 2 rowing machines, right? So if you know them, largest privately held rowing machine company in, I don't know if it's the world, but certainly in the US. They were going into China, major after sales service issues. What they did was they sold them directly out of, at the time, Amazon had a CN site, and they would sell them there. Once they got enough of a kind of a traction, they had to, they're doing a lot of late night customer service. Then they had to train a couple of people, and then they actually had a 50-person staff there. That was, let's say, 7 years ago. Let's fast forward. Now there are companies that will outsource and become your on-ground technical support in market. Those are great if you have a technical product, but if you, a lot of stuff can be done now through aggregating. For example, a company called Gorgeous, I believe, they will aggregate customer service issues and complaints and other issues across all your channels. So let's say you've got somebody commenting on Instagram, TikTok, your own website, different marketplaces. So you can have a customer service rep anywhere in the world, let's say, and they can read through this stuff. I do suggest doing that for asymmetry of time, emails and text and chatbots versus call center out of the gate. Again, without knowing what the product is, I don't know how complex it is. But in terms of, before I get to returns, the interesting thing I'm seeing around AI, and I know we all talk about AI and everybody doesn't want the bots to deal with them, but it's amazing what's happening now. Starting out by looking at what the common complaints are and mitigating them off the bat by giving a page that has videos of all of those FAQs, right? What are the common problems? Definitely reduce, that's the upfront reduction of those complaints. Then when it comes to actual complaints that can't filter through there, the AI does a great job responding. And then if you still can't do it, give them 24 hours notice and they'll get an email. And then you can see how deep, again, you need to go. With return.
How would one get access to that AI then if you were a seller?
So, well, if you go on, depending on what platform, if you're on Shopify or BigCommerce, there are plugins that are actually AI bots, but you can also feed your own bot and you can, you upload. There are services now that what they'll do is take all that data I was telling you about from Gorgeous, for example, or wherever, all the different channels of customer service, they'll aggregate and they'll create the answers. They're learning, a machine learning of what's going on. That's the best way to do it. And I have some companies and some agencies that I know have done it, and we can ask them to engage. They've done a great job with that. In terms of returns, I mean, again, it depends on if the product, you've got a few options. You can either send it back to you, keep it in market and refurbish it, sell it off of third-party channels. You can trash it in market. It depends on what's more beneficial. I've got a company out of LA, a massive, as I say, retailer client I was talking about earlier. They don't put any inventory. They're an apparel company. They don't keep any inventory in market. They bring it all back to a centralized warehouse. They sift through what's resellable, and then they ship it all right back. So they have no in-country management of that. Other people, you can pay a third party to do it, and they'll take care of it for you. But you want to make sure that they're not doing gray market sales, and that's a problem too. So lots of different ways. It depends on the product, I think.
The gray market sales is they would take it back, but then they would resell it somehow.
Right, they resell it without you knowing. Frankly, a lot of companies know that they do it and they still get money back because, and they just act like they don't know it. But no, I mean, a lot of, you don't want that to happen. I mean, I don't think. It depends on your brand. But yeah.
Okay, great. Well, just so you know, the person that asked that question is a business counselor that works with a variety of businesses. So it's good to address that from a variety of types of products, what that would need. Yeah.
And I'm always happy to chat one-on-one with anybody who wants to just brainstorm on some of these things. And we have depends on the product category, their price points, their margins as to how they want to deal with these things. But lots of solutions out there. I mean, you go into one of these shows, if it's Shop Talk or e-tail West or any of these e-commerce shows, and it's just overwhelming. Every booth has something a problem you didn't even know you had, and they got a solution for it. So
yeah, well, there's lots of things that you brought up that I did not realize would be a problem that somebody would have. So, but it is helpful to understand that the companies have, a lot of companies can provide those services. So, while we're talking and we are officially in the Q&A portion. So if anybody else wants to put a question in, I'm sorry that you're not going to be able to ask them live because maybe some people have sort of complex questions. But I did want to mention that Josh and his partners, as Stella mentioned in the intro, they've got this program called the Grow Big Initiative, and they offer round robin opportunities where you can work with them directly and, kind of get this consultation information. And, at some point, I'm sure you're charging for things, but there's a lot of information and resources that you're providing at no cost, which is why? Because this isn't an infomercial, right? So we just think you've got so much great free content. Sorry, go ahead.
No, my wife will attest to the fact that I don't make money on a lot of this stuff. But obviously all my stuff right now, this is on a volunteer basis. A lot of all my stuff is free. I mean, if you go to growbig.org/programs, we've built for 8 years, we've built a really good, robust videos and slides around all these aspects that I've talked about today from those speakers. It's usually sponsored by grants or by sponsorship from some of these companies that want to have visibility, but they're experts that I vet. So again, I don't make any money off of it, and you don't pay any money off of it. So it's great. So that's a good resource. We can send those around.
Yeah,
The other
that's
thing, the round robin concept we did with Export Tech and some of these others, and it was
oh,
really
okay.
a cool project. It was 15 minutes with an expert. There's 4 different experts depending on the interest, but most of them are, they want to know how to optimize their website. They want to know Amazon. They want to know maybe social commerce and kind of logistics. We'll bring them in. We do 15 minutes each, only 4 companies at a time. And it's an hour long, and it's really fun. And I think companies, even though it's only 15 minutes, you get a lot in because it's special,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And we at the World Trade Center have done an Export Tech every couple of years or so. I don't think we've got one on the horizon at the moment, but
Yeah.
yeah, so those of you in the audience who want to know more information, actually, I don't know if, Josh, I think you might be able to put your email in the chat, but as I mentioned, we are going to be sending information out afterwards. We'll include as many as we can of the links that he mentioned. The recording will go out and the slides will go out, and then there also will be some information on what he just described on that opportunity to get that one-on-one consultation. But being the holidays, it may take us like a week or so to get that info out. If you really want to talk with Josh right away, there's his there's his info in the chat.
Yeah.
And then we do have one more question, and that's probably as much as we've got time for. But this question is, I was wondering if Josh would be available to help companies from Canada to go to e-commerce at an international level. I don't know. Do you do that?
Yeah, actually, my partner actually is in Montreal, and he specializes in e-commerce, global e-commerce expansion. He'd probably be a great person to speak to. But yeah, I mean,
I know, I think these folks are from Winnipeg because we've got a number of
Okay.
World Trade Centers that we work with. And
Nice.
we actually met you, I think, well, through one of our local Missouri partners, but I know you've also worked with the World Trade Center of Northern California.
Yeah. Yep. And
So
we work with the Maple something. It's a Canadian US chamber, I think, the Maple something. I used to do stuff in San Diego with them. So yeah, I mean, we help the Singapore government. We have our platform just won an award in Switzerland to help Swiss exporters
oh, that's great.
using AI and technology that we have for that, and we do stuff with Pro Colombia. So yeah, we it's the same scenario inverse. There's different unique attributes to the U.S. market, but North America is certainly less different in terms of problems than, let's say, Brazil or Ouagadougou, Africa. So
And
yeah.
then all of this is ever changing, and it seems like you're doing a great job of staying on top of that. And of course, when the new administration comes in, I'm sure that's going to affect things as well. We don't have time
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
postulate on what that might look like. But
Yeah.
as you and I talked about, even if TikTok gets banned in the US, it's still one of the primary programs overseas. So we're still gonna have to figure out how to work with it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're right, Susan. I mean, if you are closing kind of thoughts, if you were going to take away, first of all, with the TikTok stuff, yes, look, I would love a world where that doesn't exist. I'd love a world where people have more of an attention span than 3 seconds. But it happens to be the case that there are a lot of discoverability opportunities for you as a cross-border seller, and the Chinese are all in it. I mean, they're all over TikTok. They've known the platform for years, and they're doing it really well, and they're analyzing the data for it. So you got to be out there doing it if you want to be selling internationally, if your product fits that category. Some of them don't. If they're over average order value of $300 right now, it's not the right platform. But
okay.
the biggest
Well,
challenge.
we have one more slide we've got to put up too. So what were you saying, Josh?
Well, I was just saying I'll stop sharing, but the biggest challenge right now, I think for companies, the biggest challenge is getting your brand out, finding your tribe, and doing the branding and the consumer engagement. All the other headaches are you can, in 2 weeks, you can get the plugins, you can get it and just say yes to global. We're still going to be hit with the challenge of getting your brand out there, and that's where you should be focused. And that's the biggest challenge.
Great. Well, I'm sure everybody agrees with what I said at the outset, just jam-packed with information and content. Thank you so much for your information. Did want to let everybody know that we're going to be doing our next Engage in Trade in January as our annual Global Economic Outlook. It's going to be on Tuesday, January 28th. And we do want your feedback. We will receive, when the webinar is completed, you should receive in your inbox a survey. But for those of you who might be watching this on a recording, you can link on this QR code and also submit your feedback, including other ideas for topics that we could present to you. So we're right at 11 o'clock. Thank you, Josh, so much for all that information. And thank you, everybody, for participating. And we wish everybody a very happy holidays and Happy New Year. Thank you very much. Bye.